Hello, my name is Eric Kalis, EOS Implementer, and today's segment is talking about the L10 meeting. L10 stands for Level 10. We're trying to have the most productive meeting of the week, and we rated every meeting to try to get to a 1 out of 10 Level 10 meeting. Let's dive right in. So the first thing you have to understand is that this is one of the six key components. We're talking about your business, and the six key components that we agree to work on to get 80% proficient are vision, people, and data at the top, issues, process, and traction down below. We'll go into some of these other slices of the pie in other episodes, but today we're going to focus on traction. When you have a great vision, you have to bring it down to ground level, and the traction is the day-to-day activities that we're doing in order to get to that vision. When it comes to traction, the key thing about traction is meeting pulse, having an L10 meeting on a regular pulse to make sure that we're constantly moving the ball forward, solving issues, getting together to talk about the important things in the business. So let's talk about the L10 meeting. The L10 meeting is very rigid when someone looks at it from the outside, but that's for a reason, is because it really, really works. You're talking about the same time, the same day, the same agenda every single week. And this pulsing that you get with your leadership team or departmental level meetings really make for an effective and productive meeting. Let's look at the agenda now to see what goes on in a 90-minute L10 meeting. The first thing that we have to look at is the timing. If you notice, the meeting is made up of very distinct segments, most of them 5 minutes, but one specific one is 60 minutes long, and that's IDS, where we solve the problems of the day. So let's start from the top. In good news, or segue, we start the meeting by everybody at the meeting giving one piece of good news personally and one piece of good news from the business perspective. Now, that's a great way to start the meeting for two reasons. One is we get a little update on everybody at the meeting. It clears our heads. It gets us from working in the business to working on the business so that we now have a nice natural breaking point. The other big factor is that we want our leadership teams and subsequently departments to be both smart and healthy. And by sharing a piece of good news, business and personal, we learn a little bit about our colleagues, whether what they're doing at work or what they're doing at home. And it makes us a little healthier as a team as we learn about all these things. It only takes 5 minutes. We whip around the table, starting with the brave one and then moving to the left, sharing our good news. That should take 5 minutes or less, depending on how many people you have at your meeting. Then you go into the scorecard. The scorecard is the running look at what's going on with the numbers and metrics of our business. We're not talking about those metrics on the scorecard at this part. We're reporting only. And you can see here how it's shaded orange, showing that it's only 5 minutes. We're looking at each metric. If it's on track, we move on. If it's off track, we decide whether or not we want to make it an issue and talk about it in our IDS or issues list. So once again, we're just going down each week, on track or off track. If it's off track, drop it down to IDS. Then we look at our rocks. Our rocks are our quarterly initiatives that we've all agreed to work on to move the company forward. We're working on the most important and the most urgent issues that are going to help our company continue to scale. Once again, in this section, we're not talking about the rocks. We're simply asking, are they on track or off track? If they're on track, nothing to talk about because we trust our teammates. But if they're off track, we make the decision, is this something we need to talk about today? If it is, we drop it down to IDS, and now it becomes an issue waiting for us to discuss later in the meeting. The fourth point of the meeting is the customer and employee headlines. These are things that perhaps are information that you might gather over the course of the week from the field and bring back to the team as a nice piece of information that they should know. There's external things like, holy smokes, I just heard one of our suppliers' plants burned down. We better tell the team about it. Or internal, good news, Mary's pregnant and having a baby, but she's going to be off for 3 months. What are we going to do to backfill her position? Could be either way, but something you might hear over the course of the week that you want to bring to your team is what we call headlines. Put them in there, let them sit there, and then we can share them at this spot. If it's something that is deeper that needs to be talked about, once again, we can drop it down to the IDS section. And as our fifth 5-minute check-in, we're looking at the to-do list. These are the things we've agreed to do last week that in theory, 90% of them should be completed by this week. If there's a challenge with one or two of them, we talk about it. Maybe we make that an issue and drop that down into IDS as well. So a quick review of the to-do list to make sure that everything we agreed to have done is actually done. Then we get into the meat of the meeting. IDS, 60 minutes of problem solving. The first thing we're doing is we're creating an issues list. All the obstacles and challenges that we have in front of us right now, we want to get out on the table, group together in a list, and have waiting ready for us to discuss. The second thing we do is we prioritize that list. What needs to be talked about today because it's the most urgent and important? What could wait till later in the meeting or maybe next week because it's a little less urgent or important? So we're prioritizing the list, bubbling up the things to the top that we really want to talk about today. And then we IDS. I stands for identify, D stands for discuss, and S stands for solve. The identifying is actually pretty important because if I put an issue on the list, it might not be the actual issue. So a little bit of conversation about what is the actual issue you want to discuss here is very important for making sure we're focused and efficient. When we've concluded that that's the actual issue, we move on to discuss it. And we discuss it as long as it takes. We have 60 minutes to talk about one issue or 10 issues, depending on how the session goes. But we're really discussing it, asking questions, talking about it, looking at things that are going on adjacent to that issue that might be affecting it. And when we get to the end of that conversation, we know it's the end because we're either saying the same thing over again or we're politicking for someone's point of view. We know it's time to go on to the third letter, which is S, to solve. In the solve part, we're looking for action items that come from this discussion that we can then solve over the course of the next week or two. We're assigning to-dos. Mary, you do this. Tom, you do this. Frank, you do this. And at the end of the day, we have a nice list of to-dos that'll break this problem open and make it go away forever. When the person who presented the issue feels that the issue is now completed, they say, I am solved, and we move on to the next issue on the issues list, and so forth and so on until we've reached our maximum 60 minutes. At 60 minutes, we're done. Even if we're in the middle of discussing an issue, we can let it wait till next week, or we can schedule a meeting offline in the middle of the week to continue the conversation. But we never let the meeting run long because we respect time and we don't want any other meetings that are coming up behind this one to collapse because we ran late on this meeting. At 85 minutes, we conclude the meeting by doing three things. One, we make sure that we review the to-do list to make sure that everybody is on the same page about what has to be done over the next week. We talk about distributing the information to the rest of the team. Anything need to be cascaded to the rest of the company that we talked about today? And if so, who's going to do that? And then finally, we rate the meeting 1 through 10. 10 being the most productive meeting ever, 1 being a complete waste of time. And our goal is to quantify the effectiveness of our meetings by giving them that rating each week to see that we're going from an 8 to an 8.5 to an 8.75 to a 9 to a 9.2 until we're having the most productive meeting of the week. So that's the L10 meeting. It's super powerful, and I guarantee you when run correctly, it'll be your most productive 90 minutes of the week. Thank you so much. Once again, I'm Eric Kalis, EOS Implementer, and we'll see you on the next episode.